This is an open letter to Uncle Sam. Love you, man. Here's the thing, Uncle Sam. Now that it seems you have withdrawn the soldiers from Afghanistan, thank God for that. But please, this is where diplomacy comes in effect. This is where it means that to prevent the next war, that somebody has to go beat the Afghans down, to prevent that from ever happening again, please, Uncle Sam, send the Afghans tourists. Yes, we all know that it's not a very safe place, it's not a very, convenient place, not very interested, not much interest. So you have to incentivize interest. Here is a backward place in the world. It's very conservative. It's top of the fucking mountain ranges. So it's very conservative. So you need to introduce new blood, new ideas to them. You tried, giving them new ideas, with guns and bombs, and they didn't get it. Okay. So obviously that the British tried that some time ago in the last century. It's a tough place, tough people. Shit. So you have to incentivize people, Uncle Sam. If you're running a real empire, this is how you do it. You have to incentivize people, liberal people, your people, to visit these places, hard to get places, with very conservative people. The visit has to be incentivized, but not with a gun, but with tourists. You have to incentivize your people to go over there as tourists, not gunners, tourists. Same people, same age, right out of high school. Bring back the draft, have people come in right out of high school, and for 2 years they are sent, overseas to places. They're incentivized, they're paid to live over there. Just live over there as tourists. You hopefully for 18 years, Uncle Sam, you have thought, your children have learned enough that after 18 years of your educational system, at 18 they can handle themselves at a foreign land. Hopefully the education must be so well done that they can handle themselves in a foreign land. From 18 to 20, 2 years drafted right out of high school. Everybody, man, girl and boy, sent overseas to live for 2 years, paid life. Not a very, not a very generous pay, a soldier's pay. But, here's, we pay you a monthly stipend, you go live in Chad, or, live in Mexico, go live in Nicaragua. Here's a monthly stipend. Your tourist number 720,023. This is your tourist number. Next, your tourist number. You just hand out the tourist number so everybody, knows their number while they're overseas or whatever. But the point is this: you spread your young people to places like Afghanistan. Anybody goes there, there's a luck of the draw, and a certain number get the opportunity to, to live in Afghanistan teach a little, learn a little, get to know the public, and it's just going to pay for itself 100 times over. You're not going to have any more wars, for one thing. If over the years, imagine this continues over the years, and there is a large population of you with roots, with some attachment, maybe not roots, but maybe some attachment to all areas of Earth. So the result is that you're going to have a very good attachment. So less misunderstanding can take place. Everybody can start trusting each other. That happens if you incentivize your people to spend time in various places on planet Earth. And this is Uncle Sam's duty. If the idea is Uncle Sam has an empire, which we agree it does so far for the past 100 years, Uncle Sam has built himself up an empire. Okay, to be a good empire and trying to keep the peace and keep the trust, to do that you need your population to be connected to everywhere in the world. So if you have a White House made up of 5 people who are, each one has spent in a different continent in their youth. Imagine a White House that comes into power 30 years from now, 50 years from now. The White House that comes into power, each one members of the cabinet has spent time on the ground in a different country on this planet. It doesn't get any better than that. To have representatives from across the empire, in a way, you have people who have actually spent time there. Spent 2 years there at least. In 2 years of youth, a lot of relationships are developed. At which point you can pick people who spend time over there. If there's a misunderstanding anywhere, they will tell you exactly what is the misunderstanding and how can it be corrected, and who what's the issue, because they have a deep understanding of the local culture. But if you do that, if you say, okay, we don't care if you went to the best education money could buy in your K-12, 12 years of education. At age 18 you got 12 years of education. We don't care if it was a private school, expensive private school, or a public school. At the end of this 18 years, 12 years of education, you have to spend 2 years somewhere else beside Uncle Sam's land, somewhere else. Luck of the draw. It's a draft, but it's a very kind draft. It's a very good draft. It's not a kind of draft that says, okay, bring out here, start marching. No, it's a draft that says, bring your beach umbrella. You draft youngsters in between the ages of 18 and 20, or every year thereafter, they're drafted at 18, right out of high school. Everyone every able or disabled bodies, man, woman, man or woman, would have to have this 2 years of draft. You owe Uncle Sam to live somewhere else. You owe Uncle Sam this. And if that can be done, I mean, you have every nook and cranny in Uncle Sam's land. There is many people who spend who spend at least 2 years, and many end up spending even more. Within those 2 years, they develop some kind of relationships that they decide to stay or come, doesn't matter, bring their other half to the land of Uncle Sam. Those kind of connections, if Uncle Sam wants to run a good empire, a good empire, Uncle Sam has to say, okay, I'm going to send my people out to the rest of the planet because I need to know how the empire is doing. So I need people on the ground over there getting to know any specific tribe or land or area or geography, getting to know them for 2 years at least. They come back much with both feet on the ground, much more worldly. And that is even better for Uncle Sam in the long run. I mean, you have, you have a land of philosophers. The environment has as much effect on the man as the man has effect on its environment. Even more so. So it is a change for the good. It is a change for the good because here's the thing, Uncle Sam. A lot of issues come about because of haven't seen much. People who haven't seen much are quickly impressed, quickly agitated because haven't seen much. Haven't seen shed holes, haven't seen shit. And a lot of, self-entitlement comes, issue of self-entitlement comes into effect exactly when people are, haven't seen shit. So this act of sending the youngsters to, these shitholes around the world, because anything beside northern Americas and Western Europe, the rest of the world still is not that well off, there's comparatively. So comparatively, sending people from the pink skins areas of the world, North America and Europe and Russia even, just sending your people out to southern hemisphere as tourists. You pay them for 2 years right out of high school to go wherever the luck of the draw, as a draft kind of thing, and wherever the luck of the draw sends them. And imagine the kind of man you send them as boys and girls, and you get back men and women of character, just because they had to handle 2 years of quite a different thing that they got used to for 18 years. They have to handle 2 years of maybe shit. So, I mean, it builds character, and when you get them back, they're not as easily frightened, they're not as easily impressed, they're not as easily, you get, you get man and woman of character. What you perceive that an army produces is a man or woman of character. Yes, it does, but so would this. If the whole idea of an army is the part that makes the character, is the part that it's a totally different environment that you're used to. It's a rigid environment. That's what army is. Well, this is not so rigid, but still produces the same results. It produces better results, much better results. I'm sorry, not the same result. This will produce exactly the kind of result that you say you want. You want real change for you want Afghans to understand democracy. Well, send them tourists to sit down and talk, go around and talk and listen and talk and listen. In the course of they don't have to do anything. In the course of being tourists, in the course of, laying on the beach, they have to buy that ice cream on the beach. Well, that interaction is an interaction that a person from the heart of the empire has with a local shithead. That interaction is the kind of interaction that Uncle Sam wants in his Rolodex. In his Rolodex, he wants a guy who has bought an ice cream once from a guy on the streets of Baghdad when he was 18. And if you have that connection, maybe, there is much less misunderstanding. There is much more humility. There is much more modesty involved. I mean, when you have seen shit in Filipinas, never been. So they tell me, you're not as easily as impressed any longer for the rest of your life with, a little shit. So, and you have a much more, relaxed citizenry. Much more, open-minded citizenry yourself. So, I mean, internet is doing a great job in this regard, but this would be even better if you have citizens go, especially this has to be incentivized by Uncle Sam, i.e. paid for. These tourists, a monthly stipend has to be paid. And yes, it's an expense, but it's an expense that it's like, it pays for it 100, 1,000 times over. This is the kind of investment, if you want with regards to the security of the heart of the empire. This is exactly what you want. You want people with connections all around the world in order to, to be able to have a very understanding empire. To have to, not to have to whip anybody like Saddam would not happen, because, there are a lot of people from there, from Uncle Sam's land, who have developed many connections there for over years, that there would be peace and security everywhere, basically, because there are so many connections that certain acts are, unthinkable. Imagine that, there are three members of the family of the one of the secretaries by chance, 3 of his family members have spent time in Syria, and more than their 2 years, and they have developed deep roots. This could happen, and could be a effective parameter in deciding what to do, how to bring more peace to that area instead of less peace, by providing arms to people who are the enemies of your enemy. It just doesn't make sense, folks. Just you want friends out of all of these countries, which I'm hoping Uncle Sam says he wants. He wants friends from all these countries. He wants to make friends with all these countries. Well, okay, that's good. It's like, but if you want to make friends, you don't have you keep showing the stick. You keep showing the stick. You can't make friends when you're whipping the stick. I love you, Uncle Sam, but if you got your stick and you're smashing it against your knee, that's the big dick that Uncle Sam has. But if in making friends, you can't whip out your penis, whip it out, and rotate it around your head when you want to make friends. And nobody's gonna touch you if you have your dick in your hand. So nobody's gonna shake your hand while you have your dick in your hand. So the point is this, Uncle Sam. Dude, put the dick away. We know you have a long penis, and we got that. Please put the penis away and send these poor bastards over there. Send tourists. Incentivize, pay your draft people in, pay them a monthly stipend to spend 2 years overseas in some shithole. By the way, in such a case, you can reduce the size of your standing army. And believe me, these guys are not going to come back home with PTSD. These guys that you're sending as tourists, they're not going to come back home with PTSD. They're going to come back home after 2 years with a big smile on their face. They're just going to come back home after the 2 years with a big smile on their face. No PTSD. At the beginning, maybe, God forbid, but mostly 99% you're going to get back very, both feet on the ground, with a big smile on their face, back in the USA. So this thing is going to pay 10 times what you invest in it. And I'm sure all these senators and your representative and senators, I'm sure none of them mind their kid being drafted into a national tourist system for 2 years, have to spend time overseas, in Africa, in South America, in Asia maybe. Just the luck of the draw. I'm sure none of the senators would have any issues with seeing their grandchildren off to spend 2 years in Chad, or Algeria, or I'm sure it becomes a family tradition. In fact, many of these countries might become a multi-generational connection to the land. Morocco, Algeria. You see what I'm saying? It's becomes a multi-generational may become multi-generational attachment to the land somewhere on this planet. And that is exactly the kind of citizenry Uncle Sam wants, that in order to have an even hand towards the rest of planet Earth. To have an even hand towards all of planet Earth, if your citizenry have been proportionally distributed all over planet Earth and have a history all over planet Earth, in that case you will have a just empire. In that case you will have true representation from the rest of the empire. You will have the real, democracy, or the real leadership that Uncle Sam aspires to have. In that case you can have it. 2 years mandatory tourist service, the draft. If you want to help Afghanistan, bring back the draft and start sending some, not all, but some, a very proportional number of your youngsters to live in Afghanistan. Pull your soldiers out and send start with small. Start with 500 a month, 500 tourists for the whole country. Start with that, and try to get them a 2-year visa. I'm sure the local, whatever the local shedheads are, whoever the local shedhead is, I'm sure they don't mind having American citizens over there spending money as tourists for 2 years. It greatly will help their local economy. And Uncle Sam, in this way, you keep the currency as the international reserve and keep down the inflation, because now the money that keep away the inflation from the heart of the empire by transferring, sending a lot of this out to the rest of the planet to be spent in small local economies. This is going to be, keep the money international, reserve currency, and there's no inflation because a lot of the new bills are being spent at the locals, at the local areas. And they benefit, Uncle Sam benefits by keeping down inflation, and the people benefit, both sides benefit. The people, the local shedholes benefit from the money that being spent in their shedholes. Maybe they benefit, they build better, and inflation is kept down in Uncle Sam's land. In a way, it helps. Not independently, this along with other measures, it would help, because the new money is not being spent locally. And just by the number of tourists, just by this system alone, you can bring, those shedholes like El Salvador and Nicaragua would, everybody would stay there to just provide service to these tourists that you're sending. And everybody is getting paid in dollars over there. It's a deal you can't refuse, Uncle Sam. It's a deal you can't refuse. This is to prevent future wars. This is essential. introducing the citizenry of the empire to the local shitholes, and introducing the local shitholes to the citizen of empire in a good setting, in a setting in which the citizen of the empire is paying the local shithole, paying for services and goods. These tourists are going to be paying for services and goods, and so the local shitheads are going to be very appreciative of these, your citizens, Uncle Sam. They're gonna love them. Just put the guns down. Send the same people as tourists. They're gonna love them. They're gonna love the Yankee. So please, a tourist ministry with one job: organize the drafting of people to spend time overseas for 2 years, and put these retired army officers in charge of the whole thing. These retired generals, put them in charge of the whole thing. They will handle the logistics. Love you, Uncle Sam.